All right. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order the February 1st Master Plan Implementation Committee meeting. We'll start off with reading our statement. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Yes?
Hello.
Can anyone hear me?
We all hear you, or at least I hear you.
All right, we stand. I am talking, Stan. I was going through the statement, so it might be your audio. I'm just going to finish up the statement, and then we can work on Stan's audio.
All right.
All right. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 99 or Verizon Channel 28 or online at www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, and or comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in the public hearings, please email your question/comment prior to or during the meeting to ashapiro@northandoverma.gov. That is ASHAPIRO@northandoverma.gov. The question comment will be read during the proceedings and responded to accordingly. Boom. All right, Stan, can you not hear us at all? All right, maybe Stan can call in by phone. That might work. All right, we'll do attendance. Chris. I see.
Chris, you're muted.
He's waving. I think that's a technical. Does that work as he's here?
Chris
George?
has waved. Yes.
He's waved. He has visually responded
George?
to here.
Yeah.
George. Holly.
I'm here.
Here. Okay.
Jay.
Here.
Jean. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I saw you on the list. Sorry, Jean.
But I'm here. Thank you.
John.
Here.
Meredith.
Yeah.
Here.
Sean.
Here.
All right. Stan.
Yes.
Oh, see, there we go. Audio. It's both ways. This is
I still struggle to make it work the first time, and once it works fine.
perfect. This is Kelly. I am here as well. All right. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Kelly.
Yes.
Before we get started with the agenda, can we solicit someone to do the minutes for this meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone like to volunteer on the minutes?
Don't everybody jump up all at once.
As long as we get something I can review, I'll do them in later down the line, I guess.
What do you mean something to review? You mean like the previous minutes?
No, just recording.
Yeah, recording.
Oh yeah. You can access this through NACAM, the YouTube page, or I can send you a link after it's done.
Okay, yeah, I'll do it. That's fine.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. All right, Andrew, any public comment?
Let me double check again right now, but there weren't any before.
An hour ago.
There weren't any an hour ago, and there aren't any now. But I will let you know if I see any during the meeting.
All right, thank you. All right, so our next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our last meeting. I don't know if people have had a chance to take a look at those. I did have one change or one amendment that I would like to make or suggest on the second page. I guess it's the second full paragraph on that page under report out on elements group strategy and prioritization discussions. It says that I noted the strategy is essentially complete. I believe we decided this one is complete. I'm either it's complete or not complete. So as long as there's no, Andrew, you're not disagreeing with me that this one is complete, I would suggest that we strike out the word essentially.
Okay, and I'm having an issue here with accessing my shared drive, so bear with me. I can't get to the original document.
Well, Andrew, while you're doing that, I would move that that the committee accept the minutes as presented with the change suggested by Kelly.
Chris Nobly second that.
Okay, then I forgot I had to ask for the vote. So let's vote on accepting the minutes as presented with that amendment. Chris?
Chris Nobly, aye.
George?
Aye.
Kelly, or I'm sorry, Holly?
Aye.
Jay?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Sean?
Sure, yes.
Stan?
Yes.
Kelly says yes as well. All right. Next item on the list. All right. So discussion regarding any of the so the next item on the list is discussion regarding any status of the strategies discussions. Any additional element group areas had any discussions?
Meredith, just let me, with your indulgence, let me just speak a little bit about a meeting that Meredith and I and Andrew and Jean and Dan had with a representative from the police department and from the fire department about substance abuse and mental health support services. And while it was a very interesting meeting and I learned a lot, the thought that came to mind for me was, how do we as a committee then do something to help with one of these strategies where it's not really clear? I mean, there is things that could be done, but it's not really clear who would do them and how that would happen. Tell me that I'm wrong, but I don't see any of us, particularly us subcommittees, as actually doing work to implement a strategy. I don't see that being our role. And so I'm trying to figure out then what our role is, because this is a perfect example. It was an example to me of situation where, if you look at the strategy, the police department and the fire department are supposed to have the lead role on this strategy, but they're not in a position to sort of be an advocacy group, or they're just not in the positions to kind of move this forward. So now, what do we do? How do we do that? How do we address that so that something good comes out of it?
Did you
So,
talk to Rick? Sorry, did you talk to Rick Gorman with North Andover Youth Center? Because they have a social services coordinator that also works closely. Actually, they spend originally they spent half of their time actually in the middle school and sometime in the high school, and they work directly with groups in the schools, as well as I know that they have also put on speaker series.
Yep.
That has actually been run in conjunction with the town, but spearheaded by the youth center to have those speakers
Yep.
come through.
Right. And we've, Meredith and I have talked to Deanna Lima, who's our community support person in town hall and all of that. So yeah, we're starting to sort of collect all those services. But then again, the question is, with that, what do we do with that information? Do we give it to someone? Does somebody take it and do something? It's not really, I don't think it's our job to do anything with it, but what happens next? I'm just confused.
So
May I have
Stan,
a
can I
comment?
jump? Oh, go ahead, George. George, if you want to make a comment, go ahead.
Well, I have a question. Do the fire department and the police department know about the youth coordinator at the youth center? I would imagine they do, but I'm asking.
Oh, no, absolutely. They're they're tuned in on all this stuff.
Okay.
So
And then,
this is-
I mean, I didn't catch what strategy you're talking about, but I gather that the master plan suggests that the fire department and police department are responsible for forming a policy on something, on some subject.
well, yeah, that could be it. It's not really that clear. It said, the strategy is written very generally, and it said, you know, provide support for, to help, people with substance abuse and mental health issues. But it's very vague about what the objective is, right? So it's hard to know what the police or fire department would do.
Well, it sounds like, well, I was gonna say they get together with a youth coordinator and see if they can hammer out, see if they can make sense of it.
Well, I suppose, but in the discussion today, and Meredith, you can give me, or Andrew, you can give me your impression. I didn't see them imagine. I didn't imagine them thinking that they had a responsibility and were going to go do something. They have a job, they do their jobs, and they help out, but they're not going to do anything on this strategy, as far as I can tell. I mean, they'll help if someone asks them, I'm sure, but I don't see them taking the lead role the way the master plan may have envisioned it when they put them down as the lead organizations to do that strategy.
So who created that strategy then, I guess would be my question. Like, who put it there? Did someone just put it there?
Someone else, maybe Gene can help. Gene is probably our continuity person on the master plan. How did all those strategies come about? Who did that, Gene? How did that happen?
The consultant team physically put them there, but it was based on all kinds of stakeholder meetings for each of these chapters. There were stakeholder meetings where we pulled town staff together to interview with them, community stakeholders. There were public forums where we held at the middle school, and for each of these chapters, they just had kind of probing questions to kind of draw things out of the public as to what they were prioritizing in terms of the master plan. And then
so who did the town see as a stakeholder for this then? The fire department? Is that?
Well, what's in the table for that strategy is the police department and the fire department. Now, I can imagine.
I'm sure the Board of Health I'm sure the health department had representatives. I'm sure the
I'm sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I'm sure that lots of people were involved. I'm sure, but I'm just trying to understand how we help based on information we find out and how we see the strategies at least structured on paper. I'll just
throw my 2 cents worth, but I mean, it's a strategy. It's there. People are actively working on it. I mean, I know you now have a better picture of Deanna and her role and how it's kind of all pulled together between the school department and police and fire.
Yeah.
And so they're actively doing it. You're right. Are they aware that that was actually called out as a strategy? But I guess I see that through these interview processes, and you guys have each picked out kind of things you want to prioritize. And so rather than implementing it, Stan, I think you're charged with kind of getting it some spotlight and prioritizing some of these strategies to the Board of Selectmen to see if they can help with the implementation by the departments. And so if this one requires funding, and I know that maybe we need some metrics to kind of prove that it requires funding, or if it just requires systems be built and put in place so that the information is easily assembled and shared, then, it might be throwing intern hours at it. I'm not quite sure where we're going to land on it, but I think, no, you're not going to implement things, but you're going to prioritize things to try to get a spotlight on it and funding for it so that the town will know that this one is being prioritized in this fiscal year or next fiscal year, and they can start to gear up to address it.
So these would be things then you sort of imagine us kicking back to the select board and letting them see if they want to help or something?
You should be doing that for every strategy. There's the only people you're accountable to are both the select board and the planning board. So I mean, the only people that can then take action on implementing any strategy are the select board and the planning board. And they'll get a sense for where you fall as far as your opinion on these strategies when you develop your quarterly reports. And I think that there's some strategies that are very, very well defined and narrow. Like last month, we talked a little bit about implementing a complete streets policy. That's a very straightforward strategy. It's like you're either going to adopt a complete streets policy as a town or you're not. And this body, the Master Plan Implementation Committee, if it sees it as a good idea to do that, it should place it as a high priority and recommend that the town adopt it. With respect to this strategy having to do with addressing substance abuse in the community, that's a very meaty strategy. There's a lot of things that any town or community can do to deal with that, and it's also a strategy that would require a lot of resources to be in place in order to really attack it in many ways. One thing I'll say, and maybe Gene can confirm this, I don't believe Deanna, as the community support coordinator, was in place before the master plan was adopted by the town. I don't know if someone could confirm that.
You're probably right about that.
So that alone, I think, and I understand, and I think she came on board around the time the gas explosions happened. But the bottom line, she came on board, and the fact that she just came on board is a huge leap for the town, I would imagine, in terms of being able to address community issues like mental health and substance abuse. So it's not to say it's done by any means, but it just means that I think a substantial progress has been made. But there's obviously more to do, and that's sort of what you've been able to glean from your conversations with both the fire and police department as well as Deanna. And I think the best that can be done is sort of just noting it as you want to continue to highlight it as a priority, so that when the select board sees opportunities to fund, let's say pursue a grant, or to support more funding to a certain department, or for more staffing for Deanna, they'll know that the Master Plan Implementation Committee, supports the expansion of those activities.
So would we then give the select board some details? So if they decided they wanted to look at this particular strategy to fund it, they would have some details, or what? How would that work?
What I would suggest is you've uncovered something where the master plan committee really didn't have the answer to how to do this. It's too simple to just say, oh, we'll make the fire department and the police department responsible. So in a way, it's a town governance issue. Who should do it? You did your job. You and Meredith did your job because you uncovered this weakness. And now I think it goes back to the town, which is the board of selectmen, or which is really probably going to wind up on the town manager's desk.
Right.
Let her decide what the best way to or what group should be assembled to accomplish this strategy.
Okay. That's another view, right?
So I guess I would interject here that this is, to me, this is a little different between being a project manager and the manager responsible for creating and tracking performance. Those are two different things. We are not the body that's responsible for this actually transpiring. To me, we're the body to advise the boards, as Andrew said, of these are the priorities, these are the things that we want to see done. We want to stay aware of it, but the actual choice of implementing it and how to implement that technically is done by town staffs and other departments. And I think this is a great illustration where it's a matter of, if we think this is important, we make that case and have that visibility. But ultimately, the details on how that happens, if it happens, has to be part of letting the manager determine that and make that happen, or see how that happens.
So now, do we make that case to you, the select board, then?
Yeah, I think that's the way I would see it.
Okay, I'm just concerned, Chris, that if we get going here and we lay 20 or 30 strategies on your doorstep and say, hi, here's 20 or 30 things you need to figure out, and fund or do something about, that's not necessarily going to be all that helpful for you, the select board.
It
Right.
won't, it won't be 20 or 30 because we should prioritize them. We should do a
Exactly.
handful at a time.
Exactly. And that's
Okay.
part of, I think, the process from the beginning, Kelly was very clear about, which is, part of what we have to do is try to identify what the priorities are and give, the community as well as the select board an understanding of here's what we think are the priorities and here's why, and then let that be chosen from there. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, we can only juggle so many balls at one time anyway, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
and then
So let me go back and ask Andrew. Andrew, what would you see us delivering to the select board on a given strategy to let them provide some action on that strategy? What would we give them? Would it be a document, or how would that work in your opinion?
So, and if I'm not communicating this, I apologize, because I feel like I've been saying this and I don't know if I'm getting the traction on this. I think your quarterly reports should sort of summarize your feelings on all of these things. And I think, for instance, you can talk about some of the observations that you made when you spoke to Deanna and to the fire and police department. You noted some of the fact that Deanna, is looking for more resources. You noted that, with today on the conversation with the police and fire, that they hadn't been, they haven't recently pursued any grants with respect to Narcan administration or standing up a community effort for more people to be able to administer Narcan. So if you collect some of those comments and just say, here are some of the things we observed in conversations with these people who are responsible for, substance abuse prevention and mental health in our community. If there's anything that the select board can do to think about ways we can, amplify these programs, we would be very much in support of it. So you don't have to point to a specific action that the select board has to take. You can just put it in context for the select board and say, here's where we stand as a community on these issues. Maybe there's a way we can address them. And of course, they're not going to be able to snap their fingers and solve all those things or get all those resources at once, especially when you combine all the other strategies that the master plan implementation committee may want to see happen. But I think it's providing more information than they had prior to this about where these things stand.
That will be true. Well, my only concern about that, Andrew, and I don't disagree with you about that idea, is that we might be able to claim we had done our job as the implementation committee, but the information we provided will be not as useful to the select board as it might have been, and nothing will happen. We'll do our quarterly reports. We'll have some information in there. We'll present them to the select board and the planning board, and they'll go, thank you very much. That's all useful. Someday we'll take a look at that, and nothing will happen. So
well, I think that the interesting part, I think what we can do in the quarter report is, because we're going after these because these are the ones as the committee in the different element areas we found as the highest priority.
Yeah.
Right. And if we're seeing that there's, but different recommendations, or we want to highlight focus, I think this is our opportunity to go looking at the master plan. These are the highest priorities, and our quarterly report, we encouraging focus in these areas. And then I think that's what we can do, right?
Okay.
To the select board and to the town manager. This was in the master plan. This is the high priority. Here's some potential. Here's an area where we need some focus.
Well, we can ask our select board member, what would be most useful, Chris, for us to give to you to make something happen?
Give us the answer, Chris.
Yeah. Other than, I would tell you quite honestly, standing on both sides of this, which is just to your point, Stan. So you report something, and we make that recommendation. Now we, on the other side, you can certainly ask that the next quarter or the quarter after. Hey, we saw this as a priority. We've seen these actions, or we haven't seen these actions. You can ask the questions. I mean, Kelly, I think, and Stan, I think when we were talking about interviewing for the board, I think a lot of the members here, it was about holding the community responsible too. So it wasn't just about communication, but it was follow through. So I think that's a fair follow up.
Can I just make one more other comment? And just to specifically to Stan's comment about, okay, the implementation committee will report out,
right?
And then everybody will say, great, thank you for the report, and things may not get done after that. The Board of Selectmen puts together goals each fiscal year, and they're pretty comprehensive and they're pretty directed. I can't speak for every department, but the planning department, community development, we look at those goals and we implement or try very hard to implement what's laid out for us. So for instance, and Jean or Dan can speak more to this, but there was a specific goal on there about having a small cell policy and working on the cell coverage issue. Well, we just passed a new small cell policy for the Board of Selectmen. And so, we addressed that issue. So there was tangible action taken in response to the Board of Selectmen putting forth goals. And I think that maybe when the Board of Selectmen looks at these quarterly reports, they may, I can't speak for every select board member, but they may take into consideration the information they're getting from these reports and say, okay, maybe we should put in the fiscal year goals that we're going to do X, Y, or Z with respect to, Deanna's position and her ability to address substance abuse issues based on the information you're giving them. So I know that's not instant gratification, but I think that that's something that.
I mean, I would certainly not expect us to get a rapid response to a lot of this stuff. It may be a year or two out even, so I get that, but I'm just concerned that, and I think you sort of said it, Chris, if there was some kind of two-way communication, here's what we think, and later, here's what we thought about what you told us, and here's what we may be able to do about it or will do about it, just so we get some feedback about, how we're doing, if we're saying things that just aren't that useful to you, the select board, if you're the gatekeepers on everything, every implementation for the master plan, as Andrew's sort of saying, then, we want it, that whatever we give you, we want to be as useful and as helpful as possible. And, you can give us feedback on that as we start doing it, whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's department managers. I think it's the town manager. I think it's the select board. And not all, some of these are easier than others, right? Things that are sort of physical manifestations of the goal are easier to track than coming up with metrics or evaluations of some of these other things, like the illustration you're talking about here. But I think it's just it's having an ongoing communication. I think the ultimate point here is let's not just throw it up there and just and ask it done. I get that.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or additional meetings or discussions that happened?
This is Sean. I did, as part of the Economic Development Subcommittee, I did receive a call from somebody from Trinity Financial who told me some details concerning the Royal Crest project and offered to make a presentation in front of our board if we had any additional questions or thoughts and wanted some more information. I went online, I took a look at the conceptual plan in more detail than I had before. And I reported back to John and Chris and the other folks on that subcommittee. And I think overall there was just a little debate on whether or not it would be worthwhile and worth our time to have a PowerPoint presentation from Trinity Financial.
And I have a thought on that one. Does anyone else have? I had the same, actually, Stan and I were talking about the same thing, Sean, and it's interesting because we kind of talked about wanting to make sure we didn't set ourselves up as sort of another checkpoint on projects and things like that, right? We certainly did not want to add that in. And I was trying to decide what benefit would there be to us and any other, anyone watching or listening at home to hearing another presentation about it, because it's certainly happening in other town meetings. And I was trying to figure out what would be different from our viewpoint in terms of what we're interested in. And I wanted to ask one to see if it was this appropriate venue, and if other people, and if it is, if people thought that it would be worth our time and viewers' time to have Trinity come in and speak and but structure any information that they give to the master plan. Maybe whether it's by element or strategy. It was just a thought. And I don't know if that's appropriate in this venue. I guess maybe that's to Jean or Andrew if that's an appropriate thing to do. And then if other people think it's interesting or have other ideas. Like, John.
So I reached out to Andrew regarding that, Kelly, because my thought was, if anything, is there a benefit to having this group be in the loop to a degree on what's going on, as far as being able to tell people what's going on in town and how it relates to, specifically how it ties into the master plan. And so I'll let Andrew kind of say hi to Teddy.
Hey, Teddy. Yeah, no, and I appreciate the interest in having them, and I'm glad that they reached out to you, Sean. Because one thing that we have been encouraging them to do is to maximize their community outreach. Make sure that people have their eyes on this project, so that no one can look back at this and say there wasn't enough sort of outreach and information getting out there. That said, I'm of mixed emotions on it. The only reason is because in terms of it being a comprehensive project that's going before land use boards, at least in this initial phase, in theory, the planning board and then the conservation commission to a certain degree in terms of looking at wetlands regulations are really sort of the bodies that are looking at the plan in the context of not only does it meet the criteria of things like zoning and all the other things, and taking in sort of the approach to having the public look at it, but also whether or not it meets the master plan's intent. And so it's not so much an implementation committee thing. Now, I'm not like, I don't know if Jean has other thoughts. Jean works with the planning board, so I would open it up to her thoughts as well. But that's just kind of where I stand. I don't know if this extra step is going to, I don't know if it would really do anything in terms of establishing its context within the master plan.
Andrew,
I really don't have anything to add to that. I have similar concerns in that, again, to go back to Stan's kind of opening here, and what's the role of this group, and it's certainly not to in and of yourself implement anything, but certainly prioritize things you feel should be implemented. And this is certainly pretty far off from being able to be prioritized in any manner. I mean, it's got a huge review process to go through prior to that. And again, that being said, Kelly can attest to this, we've cautioned them that they need to get the word out on their proposal. They need to talk to as many residents as they possibly can. And so if that was their purpose of reaching out, just to talk to people, I guess the boards we kind of encouraged them to was the Affordable Housing Trust, because it has an affordable component. The Commission on Disabilities kind of, it has a 55+ component. And so we certainly pushed them towards stakeholder engagement. I don't think necessarily straight out to this group, but
I guess the only thing, I mean, I appreciate, does it have a direct impact to us? I think the answer is probably not, but the project is huge and has a lot of tentacles, if you will. So it hits across affordable housing, it hits across economic development, it hits across transportation, it hits across potential youth services, it hits across the alcohol awareness. There's going to be college dorms there that are going to be on North Andover's property. And do we have enough Narcans, as we just discovered through Stan with the police department? So I think it has a lot of tentacles for us to at least be informed. I feel like it's happening in a vacuum, I have to confess, only because do I listen to some of the planning board meetings? Do I even know about this? But I am out and about town. I'm on 6 different boards, and I'm super involved in many aspects of this community. And I can tell you not one person that I speak to at least a month ago knew about this project. So I know that they're doing their best to reach out. I think they can do better. I think the idea that it's still discussions upsets a lot of citizens. That's not for this board, but I think there's enough tentacles on this in terms of housing, youth, all affordable housing for at least to give them 30 minutes. We certainly don't need 2 hours, but at least 30 minutes so we at least know what's going on. And, I don't know, maybe somebody feels differently, feel free to shoot me down. I'm fine with that, but that's
Well,
kind
I'd like to go back to your idea, Kelly, which is if you as the chair told the Trinity financial rep that would like for them to do exactly what you said, look at the master plan and look at the strategies and tell us where you think their project might impact any of those strategies, so just something we could be aware of. We're not, the sensitivity that you, Andrew, and Eugene have raised over several meetings, I don't see us being in any position to have any influence over any of this. We're not in any review or decision loop on any of the aspects of the Royal Crest project, but I do think it would be helpful for us to be at least informed about the project. That's all I would say. I think having firsthand information will be better than not. And I think to your point, Holly, I'd just as soon get it from them directly than have to ferret it out from a whole bunch of other sources and try to put the pieces together myself and figure out what the heck's going on. So just saying.
I guess my question would be, and again, I'm despite everything said, I'm more in favor of more people getting information than less people. I want everybody on this board to feel like they're informed about the project. But that's it. I guess I would wonder what the end result would be. So they present the project, is this board then, what action is this board going to take as a result of hearing that information? Are you going to provide a report to them about whether or not you agree that it is in fact in congruence with the master plan, and then give them concrete feedback on what they can do to make it more, in your view, as a board, congruent with the master plan? And then what if they don't do those things? Do you go to the planning board and tell the planning board, well, they're not listening to us? So, I guess what I'm saying is, what's sort of the net effect after they come before you? Or is it simply, as you're saying, Stan, just to get information? They present, you guys exchange pleasantries, they go on their way, and that's that. So I guess that would be the question.
I think it could be as simple as that, just so we hear firsthand sort of what it is.
I'd like to back up what Stan suggested. I think this will answer your question, Andrew. Ask them to give a presentation on how they are implementing what they are doing to benefit the master plan, and that'll save us a lot of work of digging and other people a lot. Let them do the work of figuring out exactly what are those strategies they're addressing or meeting or so on and so forth, and that would be useful information to us. And I think it would also benefit them, because then when they meet with ordinary citizens, they can give a detail. Well, they could give a better justification for their project if they said, we're doing the following in support of the master plan. I don't think their presentations right now, well, I've heard them twice, and they've never mentioned the master plan. And
so I just to follow up on George's comment, what I would imagine, based on your sort of view on how we help by giving information to the select board, is for any strategy, as we present information to the select board on that strategy might include an asterisk, which would say just a sort of a standard response, which is, this strategy may be affected by Royal Crest, period. Just be aware of that, but that's it, right? That's all we would say. We wouldn't evaluate anything or judge anything or try to do anything. Just say this strategy may be affected by the Royal Crest redevelopment project, period. And so we have, at least in our opinion, made the select board aware of the fact that there may be some connection here. And it's up to someone else to follow up on that, not us to do that. And we're not judging anybody or saying that's good or bad. It's just, in our opinion, there may be some effect here, right? You know, like as Holly's pointing out, certainly in transportation, hello, you know, there's going to be some significant impact of Royal Crest on some transportation strategy. So,
Well, Stan, I think it's fair to say it's a chance for us to really apply what we've been going through in terms of priorities, and if there's a chance to put that template of how we look at things over something, then there's some credibility. I understand what Andrew's saying, which is you don't want to just do this to do it, and it needs to have some value. But I think if it helps them with providing more clarity, it gives us an opportunity to look at what a master plan implementation committee would evaluate. I think it's I wouldn't call it a dry run, but it's sort of like a pre-run.
yeah.
So I don't know if others feel the same way, but I could see some value to that.
John?
Yeah, so I agree with what Chris just said. My thought on this is, yes, we're the implementation committee, so we don't have a say in anything. That's up to the planning board and the select board. But I don't think it necessarily hurts to have an organized body as part of the town have the firsthand information, because I've already seen it that there's lots of disinformation being spread on the project, and you know, in the idea that if citizens of the town want to weigh in, there's a certain process through the planning board and select board meetings. So, you know, you can shout into the, you know, people can shout into the ether, but if we can not steer them, but just provide information that might help them in that, I'm just thinking out loud here. Does it hurt to have more people in the know who can help not shape, but steer people in the right direction to ask the questions that they may have?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what you said, John and Chris, and pretty much everyone, I think is that's what I'm seeing as well. I think trying to think of what the value is, because you know, as Jean alluded to, I've heard all the presentations in the planning board, right? So I feel like the information as we know it, there's a lot out there. There's a lot to watch. So I'm like, what's different? You know, what other information could we provide, and why should we? And it's really that the master plan lens, right? If we can, and it's voluntary. Call, we can ask them, here's what we'd like to say, right? If you would like to come and have time and talk to us, and anyone who wants to watch, it's taking what their plan is and applying it to, you know, the elements within the master plan, and it's an option for them, but that's what we want to see, not the same presentation, which is great and informative, but it's out there in many different avenues already, and people can go see that. I mean, Holly, does that, I think you talked about it really well, about the different areas and information. Would that, do you think, kind of fill that need
I
that
think
you were
so.
seeing and talking to?
I think so.
All right. I mean, so is anyone against that or not think it's a good idea?
No, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I do too, as somebody who is in a butter, who is like neck deep in trying to learn about this project. I'm raising my hand and saying I still think it is appropriate separately for us to have just understanding the intersections, kind of, you know, not literal, but kind of understanding the kind of how the strategy and this massive initiative potentially overlap.
Because there are a lot of tentacles. You know, there are a lot of overlapping pieces, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If this is something that the board's in favor of doing, I really suggest putting some constraints on it, because I think you could just take a tangent and go on for an hour and a half. So really
totally
limitations on it.
Yeah, I would suggest time, right? We can either say half an hour, 45 minutes, see what they want to do. And then it's got to be structured. I would suggest structured towards the elements of the master plan, right? Those are the pieces we need to hear, you know, positives, negatives, neutrals, that they, and yeah, but it's really just information for them to do. Is there anything else in terms of the structure of the conversation people would suggest?
Well, I think it would be the presentation, but I think there's going to be a question and answer period that's going to eat up a lot of the time. So just keep that in mind.
I'm
And
sorry,
I
a
think
lot of
we
the
all,
time.
I was going to say, I think we just all have to be mindful that, our Q&A just, and again, I say this as somebody who just lives next door to the project, that we just need to be mindful to keep our Q&A focused on our roles as committee members, as opposed to our high interest to learn as much as we can as residents, because we have to channel into the other forums like what the planning board's providing to us.
Right.
And I say this as somebody who is extremely vested in understanding what's going on with that project, as Stan knows.
All right, so if we're
I
going
just want
ahead
to know
with
who
this,
passed. That's all I want.
so if we're going with this, is there any, I don't know if this applies, so Jean, this probably, or Andrew, question for you, if we're having this conversation, and they will invite them if they volunteer and decide to come and do the presentation and give them the parameters. Is there any kind of concept, like, do any of us need to recuse ourselves? Is that in the discussion or conversation? I don't think so, but just want to ask the question.
Yeah, so that just came to my mind, Kelly, and I think we probably should run that by town council. So given you're a direct abutter, if you want to kind of reserve your ability to speak in a public hearing environment, if this were to move that forward, there's just some sensitivity to you weighing in during this process at this time. So.
All right, so we can find out before the meeting and let people know.
Just as long as the town council is aware that we're in no way a decision-making body about any of this. There's nothing we can decide. We have no influence. We're just about information. That's all we're there for. So.
Understood. We have a planning board member that, although is not even a 300-foot direct abutter, she was concerned enough that she has recused herself through discussion items should it move forward to public hearing environment. So,
right.
So we will check and we'll get back to you, Kelly.
Okay, and then we can proceed, and then we'll just go from there. Okay, so should I ask should I ask the representative from the PR firm from Trinity to do this, or Jean or Andrew? Is that more appropriate for you to do it?
I think you should do it, Kelly. I think that would be appropriate.
I have no issue doing it. I just want to make sure that there's that's appropriate.
I would just toss it to Jean. Do you think Kelly, as opposed to reaching out to the PR person, reach out to like Mike Lozano? I don't know if she's in touch with him, but the project manager on it. Jean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's appropriate, Kelly, because Mike Lozano has been the primary presenter at the planning board, so you're certainly familiar with him.
Yep. Okay. So I'll reach out, ask, completely voluntary. They talked about it with other people, so see if they want to come, but with the structure that we talked about.
And just to let you know, it was Gregory Lane of Trinity that gave me a call, and I do have his telephone number if anybody wants it, if you don't have it already.
So I think they've subcontracted with Next Gen Strategies, and I believe Greg Lane is their representative from Next Gen. So.
I'll reach out and ask if there's interest, and we'll go from there and really try to everyone's point, keep it structured and let them know what this is information. I think it's information and there's a structure to it. Okay. All right. Next, the review and approval of the quarterly report. Andrew got that in for us last minute as we snuck it in. Does anyone have?
Yeah, I can pull it up as a shared doc. I can share it on my screen if folks want me to.
As part of this discussion, that I have to really give a tremendous amount of credit to Andrew for putting together the minutes from our last meeting. They were extremely thorough and extremely helpful. And so thank you so much for doing that, Andrew. That really made this quarterly report possible, if you will. So thanks. We appreciate it.
Sure. No problem. John, do you see what you have to live up to here with these next minutes?
Yeah, he set the bar really high, John. So you're kind of, it's going to be tough, right?
As long as there's a nice, well-recorded video of it, we're good.
Yeah.
There you go. I know. Did they turn on the closed captioning instead of the transcript? That's always helpful. I had one question. I just wanted to get some opinions by Jean, Andrew, Chris. So we do have a recommendation from the work done around complete streets. So we have our first recommendation there. I just wanted to make sure that the language around the recommendation was appropriate. It's just, that we have the following recommendation and we encourage the town select board to formally adopt. Does that I didn't know if there was anything that we needed to phrase differently or handle differently, or is that fine? I just wanted to make sure we struck the right note with our first recommendation.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
think-
it looks okay to me, just in the sense that you've literally taken the exact language from the strategy in the master plan and said, we're recommending this. So I think that's pretty straightforward. So I have no issue with it. Gene, I don't know if you have any suggestions from your vantage point.
No, I think it looks fine.
I have a question. I have a question. Does it make sense at this point, or would it be appropriate to describe in detail what a complete street is?
I think it'd be useful to link to it. Like, is there something out there to describe it? I would think maybe just linking to the material from the report, if there's something already out there, would be a thought. But yeah,
Just a thought on that, and I think I may have emailed you a link, Kelly. But basically, when I wrote that response, I had the MassDOT Complete Streets Program webpage up and basically copied almost verbatim some of that language there, Jay.
Okay.
I kept it specifically not obtuse, but very general, rather than dive into the weeds, because the gist of the matter is adopting the constraint is for the powers that be to adopt the policy. To get into that is a little more in depth than it needs to be as far as a recommendation from this body.
Okay. So it's up to the stakeholders, the select board, to read what a complete street is and have that in mind when they make decisions on planning matters.
Yeah, the specifics are laid out in detail as far as what the select board and possibly DPW have to do in order to achieve tier 1 status, which is your gateway into a complete streets program.
Right.
So and just they would the board of selectmen would rely on the town staff to assist in sort of putting forward what would be required. So Dan actually did a great job putting together a lot of information about the process that the town would have to take to adopt the strategy and apply for complete street status. Obviously, DPW is well apprised and well informed about the program, and so are Gene, myself, and Dan. So plenty of resources in the town to sort of lay out what the town would need to do, what the board of selectmen would need to do, and really the first step in the process is just putting together a policy document or a policy that the board would adopt in the form of a resolution. And we've already drafted language, and DPW has taken a look at it, and I know the town manager is also looking into it. The only holdup between the beginning of that discussion and now is just trying to agree to to language that both the town manager and DPW and everyone feels comfortable with, in terms of not hopefully hamstringing DPW in any way, shape, or form, policy-wise. And we don't think that's going to be a concern at the end of the day.
So, and I would see this, Andrew, I think you're spot on with that. I would see this as very much like the Green Communities Grant, right? Where same sort of thing, which is, to Kelly's point, you have links to some of the resources, what underpins it, but ultimately what ties together is what your department with town departments put together for the select board to review. And that worked out very well. It gave us enough information to be able to evaluate and say, yep, we concur with the recommendation. So I think that's perfect.
I have a question. Would it be useful to include the link that John referred to in this quarterly report?
We know what we can do. I don't know what link John's referring to, and I'm happy to look at that, but maybe even we can just link, this is pretty straightforward. MassDOT has a page that's sort of a landing page for complete streets. So I'm happy to link to that if folks agree or feel.
Yeah, that's probably because John's link was the Complete Streets Funding Program guidance. So it was in another.
Yeah, that's basically the introductory page to it, Kelly, and that's the same one I'd recommend. And if we were to post a link, that'd be the one to go to.
Yeah, because one thing I think it's helpful with this report is as much we're almost sort of a table of contents, if you will, of things that are happening and to get a consolidated view. I know as someone who frequently looks at the select board agendas, even if I don't have anything interesting, that I know about, I like looking at them and kind of tell me what's going on. So I click on the links and I see what's there. So to know when groups come in and do these summary reports, it's a great thing personally to click on and go, oh, hey, that's a way to find out what's happening. So I think as much as we could link to and use existing resources would be helpful, just for people who like to agenda surf.
I agree. I'm the same way, Kelly. Anytime we get an email from the town planning board agenda, ZBA agenda, yeah, it's a way of communicating information to the townspeople that there's no questions asked. This is coming straight from the source. So I'm a big fan of that myself.
Okay. All right. So if we add in, so the link, we're going to go with
Great.
that landing page link, and we'll add that in. Okay. That was the only thing I just wanted to talk about on the report. Anybody else have any questions or comments before we vote on approval of the quarterly report?
Kelly, I might be just totally missing this, but the very last bullet in the bottom of page 2, what does that mean? Implement an activity reporting approach?
So if I wrote the bullet, let me tell you what I was thinking. Kelly and I had talked about how we try to keep track of what we're all doing on each of these strategies. Imagine it as a large annotated spreadsheet that's sort of like the strategy spreadsheet, but with some narrative that describes ongoing activities. Nothing more complicated than that. So
it's activities of the committee. So it's really maybe we just add in implement
of the committee.
The MPIC activity. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Status approaching reporting approach.
Bad language.
Anchor it to the group. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Is the only other comment I have is I would invite, encourage, welcome, really hope anyone from the transportation committee, subcommittee, John, anyone else, if they want to join us when we present this to the select board, it would be great to have both, all of you on the call to help promote our recommendation to the select board.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. All right. If there's no other questions, then just look at it's an approval, right? We can vote on vote on the approval because this was our vote on our agreement on what's in here. It's what we talked about last month. So can I get?
I'll make a motion that we approve the report as amended.
I second it.
All right, great. All right, let's do a roll call vote. Chris
Nobley, aye.
George.
Aye.
Holly.
Holly Williams, aye.
Jay.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Meredith.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Stan.
Stan Limpert, aye.
It's Kelly. I vote aye as well. All right, look at us. Moving along. All right, so the last item on the list is on the agenda of an adjournment is new business. And this was a discussion item. Stan, do you want to raise this one?
Yes. Let me just speak to this. And we've really sort of we already had some discussion about this earlier. I had put this on the agenda just to give us the opportunity to talk about as we're going through our review of the strategies, if there are items or funding that we have identified that we might want to make sure the select board is aware of, that's just something that we might want to be thinking about. Now, obviously for this year, there's none of that, but I'm thinking like next fiscal year and subsequent fiscal years, if there are things where as part of our strategy review, we come up with recommendations that would involve potentially funding or, something that would result in a warrant article. I'm thinking particularly in the areas of land use or housing where there may be, some idea for zoning changes or something else. This was just a thought for us to discuss a little bit about whether or not the committee thought that might be something that we might want to include in our strategy reporting to the select board, or not, so that's why that's there. Any thoughts from the committee on any of that?
Well, what about tying this into, so if there's quarterly reports, it seems to me you have an annual crescendo, right, of the town meeting. So it seems to me maybe there's an opportunity to maybe use the report prior to town meeting or somewhere around that from the committee, which sort of takes where we've been and ties that together coming into it, as opposed to just totally out of the blue. That I think continuity is really important here.
Yeah.
Right. You just don't want the committee weighing on everything. So it seems to me it needs to have some connectivity to it if possible. But how do other folks feel?
Well, I would like to suggest that, yeah, it seems like it would be positive if we presented like a 5-minute report at town meeting on what the committee is doing, which would mean that it would have to be no detail in it, but just summary statistics or whatever. And we could say there's 103 strategies and we've looked at so many of them and we consider so many complete and so many underway, and then the remaining ones are yet to be done or something like that. And then somebody, if we did a similar report a year from now, somebody could look at the 2 reports and could have some idea of progress, could assess progress in some manner.
You can do it as a letter, right?
Or a letter or a handout at town meeting, but it's got to be short.
Well, I think this is where I think these are some ideas that I think Andrew and Jean, maybe you can help Kelly and Stan sort of flesh out, because the other things we don't want to weigh it down, but we want to be informative. How do we integrate that with what we're doing? But I think conceptually, the idea of this is an important citizens committee, and while it doesn't have the weight of the FinCom, to me, it's the same kind of concept in connectivity and value for the citizens. So how do we integrate that, right?
And a template for subsequent years so that progress can be assessed or demonstrated.
Yeah.
And I like that, George. I like your idea of something where we can show that year over year progress, right? This isn't a 2-year gig, right? This is how many years we've got, slightly under 20 years left on the plan. So, we're not going to get all these done in the next 5 years. It's not going to happen, right? That wasn't the intent, but we need to show, maybe we'll only have, 5% done, but look at it over 20 years, right? That's the way it works. So being able to show that view and progression over time, I think would be helpful. Show that it's not kind of a doorstop again.
Okay. And that sort of fits in with your communications strategy, right, Kelly?
Yeah. How do we do that? So it sounds like, Chris, from your perspective, if we do something at town meeting, sort of a letter, if that's or it's something that's part of our quarterly reports, right? No, to your point, it builds up. We kind of use that same materials. It's not something else.
Yeah, let's
go after.
I think it's I think we've got a little time to kind of test this out and develop it, but I think conceptually we're right there. And yeah, as you say, we got 20 years to go, but how that moves, right?
Yeah, right. And then on the budget piece, it was kind of what caught me on that one is really how do we, because again, it's not our, we're not the deciding body, but we can do recommendations. Some of those recommendations that we make to the select board may have, financial implications and considerations. So kind of how far ahead of the curve do we need to be so then those recommendations can get acted on? It's kind of like we need to even step back from when everybody else starts to get ready. Do we need to be 2 months
Right.
in
Yep.
front of that? What does that look like
Yeah.
to be able to give our recommendations so then the teams that are appropriate to do it can carry forth or not?
Yeah.
So yeah, and so in that context, it might be our first quarterly report of the fiscal year, which would be presented in like October, when people are starting to think about budgets, right? And that might be the time when recommendations might be more useful, so people can think about it in the context of budgeting or whatever. So
yeah, or even a reminder back to the recommendations that we've made throughout the quarters, right?
Yep.
Like we're gonna,
yeah,
hey, let's kind of build those. Hey, reminder. We
yeah,
talked
yeah.
about this back in March. Here you go. For what it's worth, here's what it is, and there's 75 other priorities that are on their plate. But at least we can kind of help set the context and give it. Okay.
Right.
I like that.
All right.
Cool.
I have a thought on the reporting for the town meeting, and perhaps that letter or that report should come from the select board, and it would be the select board reporting to the towns, to the citizens of the community. Here's what the implementation committee has told us to prioritize, and that public statement should be coming from the select board. And here's what these people have to say. Here's how we will respond.
Well, so I like the idea, Jay, but let me just ask the question: Isn't the planning board the official responsible board for the plan? Is that not the case? Isn't it the planning board's master plan?
The planning board has to vote to adopt it, but the selectmen vote as well to adopt it. But
Okay.
statutorily, yes, the planning board has to vote to adopt it.
So it's a joint responsibility.
So Stan, if we go back to our original discussion this evening, it would be, is anyone listening? And whoever we think should report to the public at the annual town meeting would pretty much say, yes, we're listening, and here's what we're doing about it.
Right.
As opposed to us making a report to the town.
Yep, you're right. Good point. Okay.
All right. Anything else on that one?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. So then prior to adjournment, Andrew, do we need to set up our next meeting? Or is that, I don't think did we set a cadence?
So we, and I think it's actually on the next.
Oh, is it?
Oh no, it's not here. I think our meeting is going to be March 1st, if we're going by the same. So March 1st is the first Monday.
Yes.
So are folks okay with that at 5 o'clock again?
Yep. Sure.
March 1st. Right.
Yep.
Okay. Great. I can send out another meeting invite after this meeting to make sure it gets on everyone's calendar.
Yep.
Great.
Did just because we should ask, you didn't get any public comment while we were talking, did you?
I did not. No.
Okay.
You guys are still not controversial enough. We need to find some controversy.
Careful what you wish for.
Hey, we
keep
up
the rhetoric.
We keep trying to do the Royal Crest blow up, but Sean won't let us, right?
Well, probably, you know what? Now that you're fine, we're going to do that. You might get you may get a few public comments for that meeting. I'm sure you will.
Careful. Be careful what you ask for.
Yeah,
all right, everyone. Can I get some motions to adjourn?
Stan Lippert move to adjourn.
Chris Nobley second.
All right. Let's vote on everybody. Let's vote on it. Chris.
Nobley, aye.
George.
Aye.
Holly.
Holly Williams, aye.
Jay.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Meredith.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Stan.
Stan Lippert, aye.
And Kelly, aye. All right. I think that's it.